For as long as modern history has been written, moments of global instability have followed a familiar pattern. Political systems weaken, economic structures fracture, and societies begin to lose confidence in the institutions meant to protect them. When this happens, the world enters a dangerous phase, one where disorder spreads quietly before erupting openly. In those moments, history shows that leadership is not optional, it is required. And time and again, one nation has been drawn into that role, not by ambition alone, but by necessity. The United States of America has repeatedly emerged as a stabilizing force when global balance is at risk. This role was never accidental. It was shaped over generations through conflict, sacrifice, and strategic learning. The United States did not rise to prominence simply through military victories, but through its capacity to understand the long-term consequences of power vacuums. When leadership disappears, chaos fills the space, and chaos rarely favors freedom. American leadership, therefore, has often been exercised not out of desire, but out of responsibility. The understanding that disengagement carries consequences far greater than action. The 20th century stands as proof of this reality. When Europe collapsed into war, the United States initially hesitated, reluctant to become entangled in foreign conflicts. But history forced a choice. As authoritarian regimes expanded and democratic nations fell, America understood that isolation was no longer an option. The decision to engage reshaped the world. The United States mobilized its industrial base, its population, and its strategic vision on a scale never seen before. Victory was not just military, it was structural. The aftermath of the war revealed something unprecedented. A nation willing to rebuild its former enemies, stabilize shattered economies, and lay the groundwork for a new global order. This pattern repeated during the Cold War. Once again, authoritarian systems sought expansion. Once again, the United States became the central counterweight. This confrontation was not defined by constant battle, but by endurance, patience, and strategic restraint. American leadership during this era prevented direct global conflict while steadily weakening totalitarian systems from within. When the Cold War ended, it did not collapse suddenly. It eroded under sustained pressure, economic reality, and ideological failure. These lessons did not fade with time. They became embedded in American strategic thinking. The understanding that authoritarian systems often collapse not through dramatic invasion, but through isolation, exposure, and internal contradiction. This framework would later shape how the United States approached crises far from its borders, including the slow and devastating collapse of Venezuela. To understand why Venezuela matters, one must first understand what it once was. Long before it became associated with shortages and instability, Venezuela stood as one of South America's most promising nations. Its vast oil reserves provided economic leverage few countries could match. Energy exports fueled national development, infrastructure expansion, and rising living standards. Cities like Caracas symbolized modernity and ambition. Venezuelans believed in upward mobility, in opportunity, and in the promise of the future. Yet history warns that prosperity without institutional protection is fragile. Economic wealth alone cannot sustain a nation if democratic safeguards are dismantled. Over time, Venezuela began to drift away from accountability. Power concentrated. Opposition voices were weakened. Institutions designed to balance authority lost their independence. Economic policies shifted from pragmatic governance to ideological control. These changes did not cause immediate collapse. Instead, they planted seeds of long-term failure. Corruption rarely announces itself loudly. It spreads quietly, embedding itself into systems, distorting incentives and hollowing out trust. As Venezuela's governance weakened, inefficiency replaced competence. Loyalty replaced expertise. Economic decisions became detached from reality. The mechanisms that once supported prosperity were slowly dismantled, leaving behind structures unable to withstand stress. As years passed, the consequences multiplied. Inflation accelerated beyond control. Savings evaporated. Currency lost meaning. Basic goods disappeared from shelves. Infrastructure deteriorated. Hospitals struggled to function. Power outages became routine. What was once inconvenience became daily survival. The social contract between the state and its citizens collapsed. Millions of Venezuelans face a reality where effort no longer guaranteed reward and where hope became scarce. This collapse did not remain contained within Venezuela's borders. Families fled in unprecedented numbers. Migration routes expanded across South America. Neighboring countries strained under humanitarian pressure. The crisis evolved from a national failure into a regional emergency. History shows that when populations move at this scale, instability follows. Borders become stressed. Economies absorb shock. Security risks increase. For the United States, these developments triggered serious strategic concern. Geography matters. A destabilized nation in the Western Hemisphere has implications far beyond its borders. Failed states attract organized crime, narcotics trafficking, and foreign powers seeking influence. In Venezuela's case, evidence mounted of criminal networks operating freely and external actors embedding themselves deeply within the regime. This transformed the crisis into a matter of hemispheric security. American history offered a clear lesson. Ignoring such conditions allows them to worsen. The United States has learned, often through painful experience, that early, sustained engagement is far less costly than delayed reaction. But engagement does not always mean force. In fact, the most effective American responses have often relied on pressure rather than confrontation. The American approach to Venezuela reflected this philosophy. It was deliberate, layered, and long-term. Diplomatic efforts worked to isolate authoritarian leadership internationally. Economic sanctions targeted individuals and institutions responsible for corruption and repression. Intelligence coordination disrupted illicit financial networks and reduced external support. None of these actions produced immediate headlines, but together they reshaped the strategic environment. Sanctions narrowed options. Diplomacy reduced legitimacy. Exposure increased internal pressure. Over time, the cost of maintaining authoritarian control rose steadily. This is how modern power operates, not through spectacle, but through persistence. History confirms that authoritarian systems depend on control, resources, and perception. When those pillars weaken, cracks form. For Americans observing this process, there's a familiar narrative at work. It mirrors previous moments in history where sustained American leadership altered outcomes without catastrophic conflict. This continuity reinforces a core national belief that leadership matters and that restraint guided by strategy is a form of strength, not weakness. And this belief leads to a deeper truth about American identity itself. What followed was not a sudden or chaotic action, but the final phase of a process that had been unfolding quietly for years. By the time this operation reached its decisive moment, the groundwork had already been laid through intelligence gathering, diplomatic isolation, financial pressure, and international coordination. Nothing about this stage was improvised. It reflected a model of American strategy, refined through decades of experience, one that prioritizes precision over spectacle and outcomes over headlines. In this scenario, the operation itself unfolded with minimal visibility to the public eye. Rather than large-scale troop movements or open confrontation, it relied on coordination between intelligence agencies, regional partners, and carefully timed actions designed to neutralize the regime's remaining sources of control. Communication networks were disrupted, key command structures were isolated, and loyalist chains of authority fractured under pressure they could no longer manage. What appeared sudden to the outside world was, in reality, the result of sustained strategic compression. For authoritarian regimes, power often depends less on popular support and more on the perception of inevitability. Once that perception collapses, authority erodes rapidly. In this moment, the regime's inner circle faced a reality it had long avoided. International backing had vanished, economic lifelines were exhausted, and internal loyalty was no longer guaranteed. The structure that once appeared immovable revealed itself to be fragile, sustained only by fear and isolation. From Washington's perspective, the objective was never public celebration, but strategic closure. The United States has learned through hard experience that the aftermath of such moments is as critical as the action itself. Stability, not spectacle, defines success. This is why restraint remains central even as events reach their conclusion. The goal was to prevent chaos, protect civilian populations, and ensure that the collapse of authoritarian control did not give way to uncontrolled fragmentation. As news of the regime's fall spread, reactions across the hemisphere were immediate. Some governments responded with caution, others with quiet approval, but the underlying message was unmistakable. A line had been crossed. The long-standing assumption that certain leaders were untouchable had been shattered. For democratic movements across the region, this moment carried symbolic weight far beyond Venezuela itself. It demonstrated that time and repression do not guarantee permanence. For Americans watching from home, especially those who have followed global affairs for decades, this moment fit into a familiar historical pattern. It echoed earlier chapters when sustained pressure, rather than sudden invasion, brought decisive outcomes. It reinforced the belief that American power is most effective when it operates patiently, deliberately, and with a clear understanding of long-term consequences. This phase of the story marks a turning point, not just in Venezuela's trajectory, but in the broader reaffirmation of American influence. It is the point where strategy translates into outcome, where years of calculated engagement reshape reality. And it sets the stage for what comes next, the difficult work of rebuilding, restoring confidence, and redefining a nation's future after the collapse of authoritarian rule. To understand the American response to Venezuela, one must understand how the United States thinks about power in the modern world. American leadership is not driven by impulse or spectacle. It is shaped by decades of experience confronting instability across different continents, cultures, and political systems. Over time, the United States learned that the most dangerous threats are not always immediate or dramatic. Often, they grow quietly, hidden behind failing institutions and authoritarian consolidation until their consequences spill outward. This understanding reshaped American foreign policy in the post-Cold War era. The United States recognized that stability in the Western Hemisphere was not optional. It was foundational. Economic collapse, mass migration, criminal expansion, and foreign interference anywhere in the Americas inevitably reverberate northward. Geography ensures it. History confirms it. And Venezuela, sitting atop immense resources and strategic positioning, represented a potential epicenter of long-term instability if left unchecked. American policymakers also understood another crucial truth. Authoritarian regimes rarely collapse from external force alone. More often, they weaken from within as contradictions accumulate. Economic reality collides with ideological promises. Loyalty networks strain under scarcity. Public confidence erodes. The role of external pressure, therefore, is not to replace internal dynamics, but to accelerate them, limit alternatives, and constrain escape routes. This is why the American approach to Venezuela emphasized sustained pressure rather than short-term confrontation. Diplomatic isolation reduced legitimacy abroad. Financial restrictions limited access to international systems. Intelligence exposure disrupted illicit networks that sustained the regime behind the scenes. Each measure, on its own, appeared incremental. Together, they formed an environment in which authoritarian control became increasingly costly to maintain. As these pressures mounted, the internal strains within Venezuela became more visible. Economic hardship intensified existing divisions. Elite unity, essential for authoritarian survival, became more difficult to preserve. International allies reassessed their support as costs increased. The regime faced a shrinking set of options, each more restrictive than the last. History shows that the stage is critical. It is the point at which authoritarian systems either reform, fracture, or harden further under stress. For the United States, patience during this phase was not a sign of weakness. It was a strategic necessity. American history is filled with examples where restraint, sustained over time, produced outcomes that force alone could not. The end of apartheid in South Africa, the collapse of the Soviet bloc, and the normalization of relations with former adversaries all followed prolonged periods of pressure rather than sudden action. This strategic patience also reflects a deeper aspect of American political culture. Unlike empires of the past, the United States operates within a system shaped by public accountability, institutional checks, and democratic debate. Decisions are scrutinized, costs are questioned, outcomes are measured over time. This process can appear slow, even frustrating, but it has produced a form of power that is resilient, adaptable, and enduring. For Americans watching events unfold in Venezuela, this slow-moving process often contrasts with expectations shaped by dramatic historical moments. World War II ended with clear surrender. The Cold War concluded with unmistakable symbols. Modern geopolitics rarely offers such clarity. Instead, outcomes emerge gradually, through accumulation rather than climax. Understanding this reality is essential to understanding how American leadership functions today. As Venezuela's crisis persisted, its effects on the region became impossible to ignore. Criminal networks expanded across borders. Smuggling routes adapted. Political instability in neighboring countries increased. These developments reinforce American assessments that the situation was not self-correcting. Without sustained pressure, the structures enabling authoritarian survival would remain intact. Leadership, therefore, required consistency, not headlines. This consistency also sent a message beyond Venezuela. It signaled to other regimes that the United States was willing to commit to long-term engagement. That accountability was not temporary, and that alignment with hostile actors carried consequences. In international politics, perception matters. The credibility of American commitments shapes calculations across continents. For allies, this approach reinforced confidence. Nations facing their own internal pressures saw that American support did not vanish with changing news cycles. For adversaries, it introduced uncertainty. Long-term pressure is difficult to counter because it cannot be easily predicted or neutralized. It adapts, it persists, and over time, it reshapes incentives. At the same time, American leadership maintained a clear distinction between regimes and populations. The Venezuelan people were never the target of pressure. On the contrary, humanitarian assistance, diplomatic engagement with civil society, and support for democratic norms remain central components of U.S. policy. This distinction reflects a fundamental American belief. Governments may fail, but people are not the enemy. This belief resonates deeply with American audiences, particularly those who remember earlier moments when U.S. leadership stood as a counterweight to repression. For many Americans, the story of Venezuela evokes historical memory of nations trapped by systems they did not choose, and of external leadership that helped create conditions for change. These memories reinforce a sense of national identity rooted in responsibility rather than dominance. As the crisis continued, the long-term effects of pressure became clearer. Financial isolation constrained options. International scrutiny limited maneuverability. Internal legitimacy weakened. None of these developments occurred overnight. But history teaches that endurance, not speed, determines outcomes and struggles against authoritarian systems. For the United States, this process reaffirmed a central lesson of its own history. Leadership is measured not by immediate results, but by sustained impact. The most consequential American victories have often been those that unfolded slowly, shaped by institutions, alliances, and strategy rather than force alone. This lesson carries particular weight for Americans today. In an era defined by rapid information and constant urgency, the ability to commit to long-term goals remains a defining national strength. It reflects confidence in institution, in strategy, and in the belief that principles applied consistently shape the future. The story of Venezuela, therefore, is not isolated. It is connected to a broader narrative about the role of the United States in the modern world. A narrative in which leadership is exercised through persistence, not impulse, through coordination, not chaos, and through responsibility, not retreat. As this chapter continues to unfold, one truth remains unchanged. When the United States remains engaged, history bends toward structure rather than disorder, toward accountability rather than impunity, and toward the possibility of change rather than resignation. At this point, the deeper consequences begin to emerge. The collapse of an authoritarian structure does not instantly restore stability, but it breaks the illusion of permanence. For years, Venezuelans were led to believe that change was impossible. In this moment, that belief fades. What follows is not celebration, but reassessment. Institutions weakened by corruption face the challenge of rebuilding trust. Communities begin to imagine a future shaped by participation rather than fear. From the American perspective, leadership continues quietly. History shows that true influence is measured not by dramatic moments, but by what comes after. Stability requires patience, restraint, and long-term vision. The balance has shifted. Uncertainty remains, but the future is no longer fixed by fear. To truly understand why the United States continues to matter in moments of global uncertainty, one must look beyond individual crises and examine a philosophy that has guided American leadership for generations. Unlike empires built on conquest or domination, the American approach to power has been rooted in structure, continuity, and long-term consequence. This distinction has shaped not only how the United States acts, but why the world continues to respond when America engages. Leadership, in the American sense, is not defined by constant intervention. It is defined by credibility. Credibility built through consistency, sacrifice, and a willingness to bear responsibility over time. This credibility explains why American actions reverberate globally even when they are measured, gradual, and restrained. The world has learned through experience that when the United States commits to a course of action, it does not abandon it lightly. This understanding is particularly important in the context of the Western Hemisphere. The United States has long recognized that stability close to home is inseparable from its own security and prosperity. Political collapse, economic implosion, and mass migration anywhere in the Americas inevitably produce ripple effects that reach U.S. borders. This reality has shaped American engagement in the region for over a century, not as an expression of dominance, but as a recognition of interdependence. Venezuela's prolonged crisis therefore occupies a unique place in American strategic thinking. It represents not only a humanitarian tragedy, but a stress test of principle that sustained leadership can influence outcomes without resorting to open conflict. This approach requires patience, resilience, and faith in institutions, qualities deeply embedded in the American political tradition. American institutions play a central role in this process. Unlike systems centered on individual authority, American power is distributed across multiple branches and agencies, each contributing to long-term strategy. Diplomats negotiate, economists analyze, intelligence agencies assess, legislators debate. This complex machinery does not move quickly, but when it moves, it carries weight. Decisions reflect accumulated analysis rather than impulse, and this depth is one of America's greatest strengths. For many Americans, particularly those who lived through the Cold War, this form of leadership feels familiar. It echoes a time when the United States faced persistent ideological threats and responded not with constant warfare, but with endurance. That endurance ultimately reshaped the global order. The lessons learned during that era continue to guide American responses today, including in Venezuela. One of the most enduring aspects of American identity is the belief that freedom, while powerful, is not self-sustaining. It requires defense, vigilance, and sometimes sacrifice. This belief is woven into the national memory, passed down through generations who understood that stability is fragile. It explains why Americans often feel a deep emotional connection to global struggles that mirror their own historical challenges. The Venezuelan crisis resonates because it reflects themes Americans recognize: the dangers of unchecked power, the consequences of institutional decay, and the human cost of political failure. Watching these events unfold reinforces a sense of gratitude for the systems Americans often take for granted: free markets, independent courts, a free press, and accountable governance. This contrast strengthens national pride, not through arrogance, but through appreciation. Americans understand that their system is not perfect, but they also understand its resilience. It has survived wars, depressions, and internal divisions. It has adapted, corrected itself, and endured. That endurance is precisely what gives American leadership legitimacy abroad. As pressure on authoritarian systems persists, the influence of American values continues to shape expectations. Populations living under oppression often look not for invasion, but for example, they look for proof that alternative systems exist and can endure. In this sense, American leadership extends beyond policy. It becomes symbolic, a reminder that different outcomes are possible. For Americans, this symbolic role carries weight. It reinforces a sense of responsibility passed down through history, a responsibility to remain engaged, to resist the temptation of isolation, and to understand that leadership, once relinquished, is difficult to reclaim. History shows that periods of American withdrawal have often been followed by instability, conflict, and the rise of more destructive forces. This awareness explains why American engagement in Venezuela has been sustained despite political changes at home. While administrations differ in tone and tactics, the underlying recognition of strategic importance remains consistent. This continuity is rare in international politics, and it reflects institutional memory rather than political fashion. As time passes, the cumulative effects of sustained pressure become increasingly evident. Authoritarian systems face mounting internal contradictions. Economic reality challenges ideological narratives. Control mechanisms strain under scarcity. International isolation limits options. These dynamics unfold slowly, but history confirms their power. Few authoritarian regimes withstand prolonged pressure indefinitely. For Americans, observing this process reinforces faith in long-term strategy. It validates a national approach that favors endurance over spectacle, planning over impulse, responsibility over retreat. These qualities define not only American foreign policy, but American character itself. The story unfolding in Venezuela is still incomplete. History rarely offers neat conclusions, but the trajectory illustrates a larger truth about the modern world. Leadership remains necessary, and absence carries consequences. The United States continues to occupy a central role, not because it seeks control, but because its engagement shapes stability. This reality invites reflection. What does it mean to be American in an interconnected world? It means inheriting a legacy built on responsibility. A legacy forged by generations who understood that freedom must be protected beyond borders, because instability elsewhere eventually reaches home. As the Venezuelan chapter continues, Americans are reminded of the enduring relevance of their nation's role, not as an empire, but as a stabilizing force, not as a conqueror, but as a guide, not as a voice of domination, but as a presence that shapes outcomes through persistence. History does not move quickly. It moves under pressure, guided by those willing to lead over time. And time and again, it has been American leadership, steady, patient, and resilient, that has helped shape the direction of events. This moment serves as a quiet conclusion rather than a dramatic ending. History rarely closes chapters with celebration. More often, it ends them with reflection. What has changed is not just a political reality, but perception, the understanding that outcomes are shaped by choices, not inevitability. For Americans, This reinforces a long-held belief. Leadership is not about seeking conflict, but about being willing to act when responsibility demands it. Strength is not measured only in force, but in resolve, patience, and consistency over time. The world continues to change. Challenges remain, but one principle endures. When the United States leads with purpose, its influence extends far beyond the moment itself. And that influence continues to shape history long after the headlines fade. When we consider the full scope of this alternate history scenario, what ultimately stands out is not a single operation or political outcome, but the enduring role the United States continues to play in shaping the modern world. Across generations, America has been defined not only by its economic power or military capability, but by its willingness to assume responsibility when instability threatens entire regions. This responsibility has never been simple, and it has never been without controversy. Yet history consistently shows that moments of global uncertainty often hinge on whether the United States chooses to lead or to step aside. In this hypothetical conclusion, the fall of Venezuela's authoritarian regime represents more than a regional turning point. It serves as a reminder that no system built entirely on repression, corruption, and fear can remain insulated forever. For decades, authoritarian leaders around the world have relied on the assumption that time alone would secure their position, that international attention would fade, and that democratic nations would eventually accept the status quo. What this scenario illustrates is that American patience does not equate to American indifference. When conditions reach a critical threshold, and when the consequences of inaction grow too severe, the United States has historically demonstrated an ability to act with precision, coordination, and strategic clarity. For many Americans, particularly those who lived through the defining chapters of the 20th century, this narrative evokes a deep sense of historical continuity. It recalls an era when American leadership was clearly understood by both allies and adversaries. From World War II to the Cold War, the United States learned through experience that global stability rarely maintains itself without active stewardship. Power vacuums are not neutral spaces. When left unfilled, they are often occupied by forces that undermine freedom, destabilize economies, and export insecurity beyond their borders. This understanding has shaped American strategic thinking for generations. What makes this moment especially significant is the way it reinforces the idea of accountability in international affairs. In this alternate history, the message sent is not one of conquest, but of consequence. Governments that dismantle democratic institutions, impoverish their citizens, and align themselves with hostile external actors do not operate in isolation. Their actions ripple outward, affecting regional stability, global markets, and international security. The United States, by virtue of its position and experience, has long recognized that ignoring these ripple effects carries costs that eventually return home. For older American audiences, this story resonates on a personal level. It reflects values instilled over decades, that freedom is fragile, that leadership requires resolve, and that moral clarity matters in moments of crisis. It speaks to a belief that while America is not perfect, it remains uniquely capable of self-correction and long-term vision. The nation has faced internal division, economic hardship, and profound political debate. Yet it has consistently emerged with its foundational principles intact. That resilience is not accidental. It is the product of institutions designed to endure, and of a culture that values responsibility alongside liberty. As this hypothetical chapter closes, the broader meaning becomes clear. American leadership is not defined solely by the use of force, but by the discipline to apply pressure over time, to coordinate with allies, and to balance strength with restraint. It is this combination that has allowed the United States to influence outcomes without permanently destabilizing the regions it engages with. In this scenario, the restoration of hope within Venezuela symbolizes what can occur when authoritarian systems are finally confronted by sustained international resolve. For Americans watching the story unfold, the emotional impact lies in recognition of familiar pattern in history, and of a national identity shaped by difficult choices. To be American has never meant avoiding responsibility. When the stakes are high, it has meant understanding that leadership often carries burdens, and that the cost of disengagement can be far greater than the cost of action. This understanding has guided generations of policymakers, soldiers, diplomats, and citizens who believe that the United States had a role to play beyond its borders. In the end, this alternate history reflection is less about Venezuela alone and more about America itself. It is about a nation that continues to matter, not because it seeks dominance, but because it understands the consequences of absence. It is about a country whose influence persists not through fear, but through credibility built over decades of engagement, sacrifice, and strategic learning. And it is about a people who, despite uncertainty in the modern world, can still look at their history and recognize a consistent truth. When America leads with purpose, history listens. This is not the end of the American story. It is a continuation of a long-standing legacy, one defined by responsibility, resilience, and the enduring belief that freedom once threatened is always worth defending.